middle school woodworking program that I took. And it's sort of the closest thing in my experience to the kinds of work that you're doing. So I'll try and sell someone on the value of this program starting in, or for 1 minute starting now. I went to a school in Richmond, Virginia for 13 years. It was an all boys school. And the probably one thing other than my high school yearbook, which is on the shelf right down here below me, that I have on my desk are these wooden objects here that you see right there. I made those. I made them in 6th grade, I guess, and maybe 7th grade as well. And it was in a woodworking class taught by this man you can see here, Stephen Cooper. Steve Cooper's taught woodworking at this school. I think maybe he just retired, so probably close to 40 years he's been working there. And this was such a formative experience to be able to learn something that you had no understanding of before, in my case, and end up with something that was tangible, that was functional, and it's memorable. I remember how well it incorporated with our math class as well. Okay, that was a minute. All right, we're going to take it to 30 seconds. And you're going to have the same experience too, where at the end of it, you think, oh, wow, I should have changed things a bit. And I haven't rehearsed. I just knew I wanted to talk about Mr. Cooper's class. All right, we're going for 30 seconds, starting now. Steve Cooper has taught woodworking at my school for almost 4 decades. And I took his class about 30 years ago. It's a great way for boys, in my case, to integrate the sort of abstract concepts of math and design and planning, organization, and even a bit of history as you sort of learn about how different styles of woodworking into a subject where you end up with something that is functional, usable, and that you can always say was yours. Okay, 30 seconds. We're gonna cut it in half, okay? 15 seconds. Boys really benefit from the ability to work with their hands. Girls do too. In my case, these are objects that I made 30 years ago that continue to be memorable for me and useful to me because of a class that taught me the essentials, the basics of working with my hands in woodworking. That's only 15. Okay. Finally, 7 seconds. We're cutting it in half. Okay. Ready? There aren't many ways to work with your hands in school. This is one way in Mr. Cooper's class to do something that you'll remember forever. 7 seconds. Okay. So that was my attempt to imagine a program that I might want to promote. You're going to have better ideas and more specifics on how to promote your program, as well as an understanding of your audience. And so what we're going to do is break into pairs. And Blair, I believe, is going to facilitate this. I'll give a little more instruction, and then she can give instruction, or Scott can, whoever, on how we're going to make this happen. Pick one of you to start and run all the way through the sequence, 60 seconds, 30, 15, 7, and then switch, and the other person should do the same, okay? And then when you're done, remember where you ended up. So try and maybe write down that sort of 7-second version as best you can, and then we'll come back together. I should probably stop sharing my screen, I'm guessing. Yep. And turn it over to Scott.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, Blair is going to put you in pairs. Let's take 2 minutes. You each get a minute to introduce yourself in your pair. So really, you're going to have time for your name, what you teach, where you live. And then Blair can broadcast messages to you. So after 2 minutes, Blair will say, start your 1-minute pitch. And then when that's over, she's going to say, okay, if you don't finish it, you don't finish it. Then she'll broadcast, start your 30-second pitch. And when that's over, she'll say, start your 15-second pitch, and then the 7. And then she'll do it again. So we're going to keep you on a timer. So don't start until you see the message from Blair. And Massey, if you can stay in the room with Blair maybe and help her with times, will that work? Or do you want to pop in and out of rooms?
I can stay in. Blair, if you need that help, let me know.
However you want to do it. So Blair's going to break you now. So join your breakout room. Remember, when you come back, don't leave the meeting. I did that yesterday at ACTE. Return to the meeting, and we'll see you. So it's going to be about 16 minutes or so. And Aaron, I think we're going to pair you up with somebody. You don't need to do a pitch, Aaron, because I think we've got an odd number. So we need your help.
We had one person.
Are we okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
dropped, so we've got even numbers.
Okay, so Bob, Danny, Aaron, and I may kind of eavesdrop on some rooms and hear how it's going. So
And
Hey,
just keep
Scott.
working through that. If anyone pops in, just ignore them. Keep doing what
yeah,
you're doing.
just ignore us if we pop in. Yeah, Bob.
Before we go to our breakout rooms, can we have 1 minute of think time? Just so that when people get into their breakout room, they've had a minute prior to that just to think about it before they meet this person they may not know.
Yes. So let's do one before we break out. Let's do a minute of think time of what you want to say. So starting now, we're going to be very scripted here. We got a minute.
Here we go.
Some sharing. Anyone who's willing to jump in and talk about what the experience was. Some questions to think about. What did you find by the time you got to the end was not there anymore, as in you kind of determined was unnecessary, extraneous? What did you forget? This is the converse of that in your more expansive pitch that became important toward the end. And how, as you were talking, were you thinking about who your audience was and how to meet their interests? So what did you leave in or out as time went by, and how were you thinking about your audience? I would love someone bold to chime in by unmuting themselves and share what it was like.
Don't be shy.
I don't mind starting.
Good.
I found that with the 1 minute, had a lot of fluff. I had a lot of loose language, a lot of modifiers. And as we tightened it up, I was thinking about, in that 1 minute, I was thinking about what are the main terms I want to include in 7 seconds when I'm speaking to teenagers. And like my background right here, I included, high performance race cars. And I included careers, industry partners, hobbyists, and earning a living, right? So I wanted that in my 7 seconds. And fun. I think I wanted to make sure there was fun in there too. So
Great. Who else would like to jump in?
Well, you know me, I'm never shy about talking, so I'll give you a quick one. Of course, when you start talking, when you have a minute, you're going to talk about some of the great features of your facility, who you're working with, some of the machinery that you might have that, of course, makes your facility kind of unique, how much you can teach them, how many different careers you might have that they can, of course, hopefully find their passion in. As your time got down, you were thinking more of giving them an opportunity to be creative and design and build with, again, a great facility, having professionals that are there to instruct you. And the main purpose, of course, is to find your passion so that you can find a career that you're going to love to go to every day. And it's not work, it's your hobby, it's your passion, it's your joy.
Great. You can hear in both experiences, I'm hearing sort of catchphrases, taglines that you might think about as you promote your program. We can talk more about that later. Does anyone want to share from the listener perspective, sort of how you were taking in this information and how it sat with you? Henrietta?
Brent was my partner, and when he spoke, he started out with his story, and really when you start with the 1 minute, you have your story. And by the time he got to the end, he was using his tagline or his slogan, plus a little bit around it, a few more sentences. So it really brings you down to what the focus is or what you're using to promote in your classroom, because he obviously has it promoted already about the spark and welding. And so it's a good way to bring it down to exactly where you want to be when you want to promote. And I asked him, I said, you must use that term a lot. He said, I got it on all my t-shirts, so it brings it back to where he is.
And what is the phrase?
Say it, Brent, because it's something about the spark.
It's creating a spark for the future. And then we have a picture of a girl welding with sparks flying all over it.
Great.
So, and
Good.
and-
And, you know, we'll talk about this too. We can't forget the story, right? I mean, it's rare that you're only going to have 7 seconds to talk to someone about your program, but you know, it does happen. As a kid is passing you in the cafeteria, you might not even have 7 seconds to get their attention, right? But once you've drawn them into a conversation, you got more time, and that's where you can bring out some of the story. You can, you know, show them some things, have them, you know, engage in a different way. And we'll talk about how to blend that story in there. Okay. Terrific. I'd like us, before we move into sort of the instructional part of the show, to take 30 seconds, if you haven't already, to write down what you ended up with. So as best as you can remember that 7-second pitch, make some notes of what that was. Okay. Now we'll come back, and I want to talk about a structure that I find works well for organizing communication strategies, marketing, you know, promotion of some sort. And it's a method that really puts your audience at the center, because that's what we want to do, right? You may have found, as you were making your pitch, sometimes we find that we're really saying what would sell us. We're not thinking about what would sell the person that we're talking to. We're thinking about the things that we value the most, and we're not considering their interests, needs, priorities, etc. And so developing a pitch that's really audience-centric is vital. I mentioned at the top that my company, which is essentially me working in my house, with some help from folks that I bring in as needed, is called 5E. And 5E was the name I gave to the company, one, because my name, Massey Rich, is so unusual and hard to spell that I was absolutely not going to name anything after myself. It'd be too confusing. Two, I got into education communications on the 5th floor east side of the US Department of Education's building. My office was 5E101. It made some sense there. But then also there's a teaching method that I wasn't aware of until I was trying to figure out what to name my company, called the 5E method. It's a constructivist learning theory, if you're into the jargon, that was developed particularly by and for science teachers some years ago. But the basic idea is, if I'm trying to teach you something, and I don't account for who you are as a learner, what you know, what you don't know, what you think you know, what you want to know, you're not going to be interested in learning something from me. And if I don't involve you in the experience, something experiential that helps you learn it, you're not going to remember what I'm trying to teach you. And it turns out that what works well in chemistry classrooms also works well in marketing, public relations, communications. And so I thought, great, perfect name to put on the company, because it's a great way to organize yourself when you're trying to figure out what you want to communicate to whom and how. And so it's a neat mnemonic device that I'm going to take you through, and we're going to see how it applies to planning promotional strategy. So it's all the E's. These are all words that start with E, and it's a sequential thing. So it first starts with engage, right? We need to think about who it is we're going after and where they are. How are we going to get to them? And then once we find them, you know, when we encounter them, what have their experiences been with whatever it is that we're trying to bring them into? So have they had any exposure to your subject? In many cases, probably not directly, but indirectly, you can point out the ways that the skills you're teaching are applied to things that they use in their daily lives, applied to sort discoveries and milestones in society, things they might aspire to do or have in their lives. That would be one way to approach it if they haven't necessarily had a direct experience with the subject and the trade that you teach. So we want to engage and really understand what they're where they're coming from and how to find them. And then we follow Dora to explore here. What are they interested in, right? What do they know? What don't they know? And an important question is, what do they think they know? What are their assumptions, which could be accurate, could be inaccurate, about what it is we're trying to convey to them. So we're going to explore this. I should have mentioned, we're going to pass around a worksheet later that's going to help you organize your strategy around these E's. So don't feel you need to take notes necessarily. You're going to get all these questions and the structure of it once we go through them. So exploring our audience and their interests and understandings is important. And then once we have that, once we've figured out who we're going after, what it is they know or want to seek to know, then we got to figure out how to talk about what we want them to know, right? How do we connect to their interests, their understanding? This is the explanation. This is the third E. This is the messaging of what you're doing, right? What are you saying that connects to that audience? And then once we've figured out something that we feel is resonant with our audience, that really pushes their buttons and lights up their interest, then we think about all the different ways that we can get it out there, right? So this is elaborating. That's the teacher word in the method. I use extend. We're basically amplifying what we've got, right? So what are all the different ways that we can push this out, the channels that we have at our disposal to reach the audience we're going after? Again, considering where it is that they are, right? So it's hard, you know, if there's not already a bridge leading to them, it's a lot more work to build that bridge than to figure out what bridges already connect to them. So where are they already? How can you get there? How can you access that channel? And then similarly, what are the different iterations of your message story-wise that convey it? So to make that a little more concrete, if you are promoting that your class is a great way to train for a well-paying job, then who are all of the graduates from your program and the jobs they have, the money they're making, the experiences they're having, the promotions they've gotten, you know, et cetera, that you have in your toolkit that you can pull out. You've just got one story after another that emphasize the message of, if you take this class, you're going to be set up to get a really good, rewarding job that puts you into a career that will could last you a lifetime if you want, right? So what stories do you have that convey that message? And then all the different ways you can push it out. Make sure you assess those. And so then once we're putting this into action, we want to know, well, is it working? And so that Whitney Houston reminds us, how will I know if the kids really love us, right? How will we evaluate whether what we've pitched at them is working? And this is where you've got to come up with the metrics that you think are meaningful to you. Again, it kind of gets back to the audience and what you're trying to get them to do. What is the action you want them to take? We're talking tonight about how you get them to register for your class. So that's a clear metric, but you might want to get more specific of how many kids that I spoke to in person, you know, percentage-wise or otherwise, signed up for my class, or how many people came to my information session at lunchtime this year versus last year, or this month versus last month. How many students of mine who are already in my class did I motivate to share an Instagram post from my class as a way to sort of build your evangelical force, your sales force, and we'll talk more about that later. This is where you decide what's going to be meaningful to you on the front end, and then watch for that, how that metric plays out over the course of your promotion. And then if it's working, by all means, keep doing it. If it's not, try and go back and figure out where you need to make some adjustments so you can get back on track to make progress toward that those goals that are meaningful to you, that get toward your ultimate objective, right? So evaluate is the last one. There are a number of ideas I want to pull from this community, and then we'll go into an exercise where you can start to work on this for your own program. Through, as I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of exposure to you as individuals in your program through the work I've been doing promoting the 2020 prize and some of the research that Harbor Freight Tools for Schools put out last spring about the importance of skilled trades education, some of the needs, opportunities and challenges in the field, public support for it, et cetera. And then Scott and Bob in particular have also shared some of the things that you guys have been doing to promote your program. I pulled out 3 here that have caught my eye. I just wanted to talk about them, and I know at least 2 of the 3 are on the call tonight. So feel free to jump in and add color to this, or correct my understanding of it, because it's largely based on looking at materials you've created already. But these are sort of 3 different channels. Back to the extend E, all the different ways that you can push out your message. Here are 3 different ways that your colleagues have done this. Justin in Paso Robles has a trailer that gets his program out of his classroom, right? So go to the people, go to where your prospective audience is, and demonstrates what welding can look like, and even gives students, prospective participants in his program, an opportunity to use the equipment and do a bit of welding. Justin, I think you're on the line. If you're willing, could you fill this in a bit for us and tell us a bit about what you do with this and what results you've seen from it?
He was on the line.
All right, we can also come back if Justin happens to chime in. I'll also mention why I've got you. We're going to be moving to a worksheet that's linked in a Google Doc that Bob has put into the chat. So we'll come to that in a moment. Second example here is from David in Maryland. He has had the opportunity to get some TV ads created for local television, promoting career CTE programs in general, not specifically his program necessarily, though you'll see images from it, but the broader career and technical education program in his district. There were 4 of them, I believe. They're available on YouTube to see, in addition to having aired on television. One line that caught my eye from one was, "Jobs are waiting, no debt." That's, you can fit that certainly into a 7-second pitch. And that was, particularly, I think the rest of the ad, the whole of the ad was targeted at parents to help them understand that this was a valuable path for their students to be on that could lead to post-secondary opportunities, jobs immediately, a combination of the 2, and bottom line, not burdensome debt that would weigh down the family. So that's a channel he had access to that some of you may have access to where you are. In other places, it may be cost prohibitive, or you may just not have the relationships to make it happen, but it's something to think about. And then I know that Matthew Barberchek's on. We know him on Instagram as Jack of All Learning. I've become a follower, and really takes you through his feed, which has more than 800 followers now, up there in Michigan, into his program. Also, you get a bit of his life as well, and his dog. Always good to have some dogs in your Instagram feed, or pets in general. But we can see things that students are working on, and we can see also his process. So Matthew, you're on. If you'd like to share more about your thinking, your sort of content strategy, to the extent you have it with your Instagram feed, we'd love to hear about it.
Sure. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it when you said it was, you can see my process, because honestly, I do most of those posts for me, if just as a way to reflect and look back on everything that I've got going on, and so I find it very helpful to force the reflection. Go at the end of the day, scroll through, see what pictures are there, share a picture, even writing the copy, just helps me like either remember something good that happened that day or remember a practice that I want to repeat or practice I don't want to repeat. So it started out as a very reflective process. And that's just what it is it's a reflection of my teaching process. And it's done a good job of connecting to other shop teachers, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll talk about the tools in our toolkit. Certainly social media is one. The sort of 101, the basic of social is to be on there yourself and get your own content out there from your program. The advanced version is when we can actually get the students in your programs and maybe your other colleagues at school to share your content or to create their own content that's aligned with your goals so that they're through their networks promoting your program as well. Okay. All right, let's move on since I don't want us to run out of time here and talk about how you can get started on this work. First, I just want to I hit on it just a moment ago, but let's really assess. It's important when you're doing the thinking about the extend step, that third E, that you're thinking about what's in your toolkit. And I really want, just to extend that metaphor, you are teachers who use toolkits, literally toolkits. Some of you have received literal toolkits from Harbor Freight Tools for Schools Strong Start program. I want you to consider the channels that we have up here as valuable to the success of your program as any literal tool that your students are using and that you're using in your trade work. And I've listed just a few of them here. Plenty of things on the social media side. Again, if you're, I'm prioritizing channels that are going to be where your students are and where their parents are. And top of the list are going to be Instagram and TikTok for students. And then they're also going to be consulting YouTube for a variety of things. You may already be posting instructional videos there or bring in content from other producers to work with your students. Facebook's going to skew a bit older toward their parents. Snapchat's certainly something that's still out there and in use as well. Pinterest also similarly going to be more parents, tends to be more female users on Pinterest as well. But just a few platforms to think about and consider, am I on those right now? If the answer is none of them, then I would think strongly about how you can integrate that into your program and your work. If it's not one where your students are, you should think about how to get onto one of the platforms where your students are. And really enlist them to tell you what that is and how they would use it. On the right side of the column, we've got a variety of other channels, a little more conventional. Does your school have a newspaper? Is there a radio station, TV station that sometimes happens? Is there a student program for that might be willing to produce a video or an ad where you could partner with that teacher to produce something about your program? The mobile welding trailer that Justin takes around goes out to in-person opportunities, expos, county fairs, middle school campuses, etc. Think about what those are in your world. Think about physical bulletin boards in your school. Are there PA announcements every day or weekly that you can, tuck an ad into? Can you pop into other teachers' programs or other things while kids are on Zoom sitting in front of screens? If you're teaching remotely, can you borrow some time in another classroom to come in and talk about what you're doing? The student sales force is so important. You're not a one-person marketing operation. You're really trying to motivate other people to be your sales force, and the best ones for you are your students, right? And your graduates, as well as other adults in the building, counselors, other teachers. So might you think about a sort of advisory board of your students that you currently have who can help you craft a strategy to reach their friends, their peers, their siblings, kids younger than them, to bring them into the program. Newsletters, the PIO at your district communications office could be helpful. I've seen a number of prize winners really leverage the communications capacity of your school district. And of course, what we call earned media, where you're pitching yourself out in some way to a local media outlet. That's not as targeted, right? You're hoping that someone in your audience happens to read it, watch it, listen to it at that time, but it never hurts to get some earned media as well. It's just a bit harder. So think about what tools you have access to. we use the worksheet. We're not going to have time tonight to really sit and think about it and talk through it. But the worksheet that Bob has linked to in the chat is a restatement of these questions here, the 5 E's and the questions underneath them that I went through earlier. And what I'd like you to do with that, if you're so inclined, is sometime when you have some time, return to what that essence was that you came up tonight, that sort of 7-second pitch of your program. Really write down for yourself who you're going after. Be specific. If you're just writing students, that's not enough. I really want you to think about what grades, what type of student are you going after. Think about how you can diversify your program, since we know that's a particular challenge and a need in skilled trades by gender, by race and ethnicity, students' background. You think about what type of audience you're going after and be very specific about them and what you want them to do. And then try to answer all of these questions so that ultimately you're left with, essentially a pretty good skeleton for your own promotion strategy that then you can start putting into action and seeing what works and doesn't for you. So that is a resource, that worksheet is a resource available for you.
That worksheet,
in the
Massey,
future.
if I can just interject. So Bob, when you click on that worksheet Bob put in there, it'll say, it looks like permission, but make a copy and that'll go on your Google Drive. So you'll have access to it.
Okay. So again, that's your homework to the extent you find this of value to you. And then we hope from beyond tonight, you'll share what works for you. This is a tremendous community that Harbor Freight Tools for Schools has built and that you have built among yourselves. I can just tell tonight with the crosstalk among people across different time zones and subjects and schools and years where you've been involved with the prize, that you've really gotten to know each other and value each other. So share what you've done, what you've learned, what works and what doesn't. And that can make us all better at promotion. You can certainly do that. I hope we'll start to see that on some public places that you market yourselves, social channels, etc. But within the community, please do bring that back. So that's, with a few minutes to spare, what I wanted to cover tonight, but wanted to take any questions or ideas that have come up from this presentation tonight before we part.
Hey, Massey.
And again,
can I
just
put,
jump in.
Can
Yes,
I put
Scott.
Aaron Walsh? Aaron, you want to give a little Instagram plug and tagging?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. Just unmuting myself. I just wanted to ask you guys, particularly for those of you who are participating in the Strong Start program, if you know your students are active on Instagram, asking them to post what they're building and to tag us in it would be fantastic. We'd love to repost their stuff and share with everybody who follows us the great stuff that your kids are building.
The cool thing about your kids posting, if they post and tag us, we can repost it and we do not need permission slips. So if you encourage your kids to post, then we can share it in a broader network without doing the media releases.
And in vain with our usual branding nagging, please remember to have them tag the HFT for schools, not the HFT handle, please. Thank you.
You said HFT for schools?
Yes, that's correct. I'll put it in the chat as well.
It's right here on the social media side of the page under Instagram, the various accounts and hashtags that would be good that are commonly used.
Just again, friendly reminder that, we're part of the SMIT Foundation rather than Harbor Freight Tools, the company. So anytime you all tag us, please use HFT for schools rather than at Harbor Freight, which is the company's social media handle. So HFT for schools would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
And the HFTFS, is that a good link to use as well, the one that's up at the top?
Yeah,
That's the hashtag. Or...
Yeah, I mean, the tagging HFT for schools will make Harbor Freight Tools for Schools aware of it and sort of gives an incentive to share it. Anyone who's following, let's use skilled trades as the sort of more relevant example. Hashtag skilled trades will be for any user on Instagram who's said, I'm going to follow anything that has that tag on it. And so that's going to bring in a lot of different accounts. It's good to use both for most of your content.
All right, so I'm going to sound like a total idiot when I ask this question. What's the difference between a hashtag and an @
So the @ sign is the account. It's the user. So I'm saying that, you know, this organization, this individual is either involved in this or has an interest in this. The hashtag is sort of a category of content on Instagram that users across the platform have said, I'm interested in anything related to skilled trades. And so I'm going to, you know, indicate, I'm going to follow that category. And my feed is just going to be full of anything that someone has put that onto. And so that's why I would do both. If you only do HFT for schools, you're only going to get sort of those who are already interested in Harbor Freight Tools for Schools. The hashtag will broaden your audience to people who are generally interested in skilled trades. And your school is going to have their own, you know, this is where I would bring in your kids and say, you know, what are some of the accounts and tags that are used generally around our school? You know, there might be one with the school's mascot name in it, or, you know, certainly the school or district. You would want to have those that are localized since you're going for an audience, you know, within your community.
You know, one of the things I wanted to mention, sorry to interrupt, I saw that Harbor Freight Tools for Schools, our school district only allows Twitter in terms of something that they support. And I found, you know, Harbor Freight Tools for Schools on Twitter, but that might be something of interest for everyone in the group to find them on Twitter as well, because that's something as our district we support, and maybe everybody else does as well.
Yeah, and Kyle, you're making a good point. I omitted Twitter, I think unintentionally here, or maybe I was just annoyed with the platform that particular day and didn't want to promote it. But I mean, it's a very different conversation that is generally not going to be reaching your high school student, but you know, could be useful for other audiences in particular if you're trying to build support there. Questions or ideas that this has surfaced for you tonight?
Yeah, one thing I do a lot of Twitter, but for welding, if I tag like Lincoln Electric or I tag Miller, I've had some of their celebrities like Jesse James retag something that we did because he's a sponsor of that or sponsored by that company. So if you make sure you tag the companies, like if you're working with those things as far, and then you'll end up seeing celebrities or people that are famous in the social world retweeting what you did or resending it out, and that's going to get you a big boost too.
Yeah, our the big industries that we work with, we always tag them and they always promote it. So that's why I was mentioning it, because they take our students' pictures and then send it out through the industry, like what Brent's saying.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. You know, even a student just using a particular piece of equipment, if you tag the manufacturer, you might be surprised that they would, you know, promote it. But again, does that get to the audience you're going after, right? I mean, it might feel great to see a tool company promote it, but is your, you know, 15-year-old prospect following, you know, that conversation already? Probably not. So you want to make sure that you're really staying focused on your audience.
Massey, I
Yes,
want to say thank you for you can't see me, but I've got like 59 million Post-it notes up here, and there's a Post-it note up here that says 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever. But I want you to know that I appreciate a lesson plan for me since I've been online since March of last year. Okay. And but it gives me something that I can do and I can take and run through with a project with my students. And I just appreciate it. So thank you.
Great, good. Well, yeah, I mean, the countdown exercise could work in a lot of different ways too, not just in helping you think about your program.
To implement. So I wrote it down. It's on my things to start doing once in a while.
Terrific.
Appreciate it.
Okay, guys, I think we're a little bit over. I want to respect your time. I want to thank Massey for putting the presentation together. Bob and I are always here if you have follow-up questions. I am not a social media expert. Bob knows a little more than me, but we got Aaron out there. We can always forward to Aaron if you have questions on tagging, that sort of thing. I know you can tag multiple people. So if you tag those companies, tag, Tools for Schools as well, so we can use it. But really want to put a challenge out there. I think Bob said the other day, for your New Year's resolution, if you're not on these sites, try and get on them and really help. It'll be a great exposure for your program, your students, and who knows, maybe we can talk Danny into putting out an incentive out there for the most post or something. We'll twist Danny's arm, see what we can have him give up for us, or gift cards or something. But I want to thank you all so much. Stay tuned. Have a great holiday season. Stay safe. We'll be talking to you in January. But yeah, that's all I have tonight. And thank you all so much for taking the time tonight.
All right, thanks
Thanks, everybody. Good luck.
Enjoy the holidays.
You too.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you, guys.
Thanks, you guys.
Hey, thank you.